What's up, you beauties? Welcome to HW 3.44 featuring Russ Joy. I'm Jim, joined as always by Jack and Kyle. If you're not listening live, please make sure to subscribe, follow, and listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Spreaker. Just a quick shout out to our affiliate sites, fullpresscoverage.com and bellyupsports.com. Check them out during the episode. And while you're listening to the episode, check out our site, hwhockey.net. Yes, I know it's not updated. I'm getting to it, putting out a lot more content. So we're going to have that update for you soon. But boys, feels like it's been a while since we've been on for a show. Feels good. Happy belated Father's Day, by the way.
Thank you.
Thanks.
How does
This
it
is first for me.
How did it feel?
Abby got an absolute kick out of your text, by the way. The veteran presence, father.
You are. You're the Faja veteran presence on HW. Jack's the rookie. And I'm in the minors still.
Minors.
Yeah.
Waiting on that call.
Yeah. I'm trying my best. I'm trying hard over here. I'm
He's
working.
going to be a career CHL guy if he's not careful.
So, yes, we are having a guest. Our good buddy Russ Joy is coming on to join us in just a little bit. Any minute now, actually. Hopefully the link works for him. Boys, a lot to talk about as far as who we want to bring in. In general Flyers news, there's nothing going on. So we're creating a little bit to talk about. And, before we have a game for you, for the listeners coming up, and it's called So You're Saying There's a Chance. And where did we get that from? Well, everyone's favorite movie. Everyone's seen Dumb and Dumber. Here's the clip. We're going to be playing this a lot because I got a problem. Here it is.
So you're telling me there's a chance.
And we're going to be using that for guys like maybe Jack Eichel, for guys like Matt Dumba, Matt Tkachuk, Josh Manson, Rasmus Ristolainen. We have a bevy of names that we're going to pull out of a hat, and we're going to ask Russ Joy, hey, do you want this guy? Is there a chance the Flyers could sign or trade for this guy? And we're going to go from there. We're going to have fun with it. Before Russ comes on, I want to ask you guys, because Shane O'Brien, I can never remember the name of his show. It's the one with Scotty Upshaw, though. He was on a Sportsnet show last night, and he mentioned that Matt Tkachuk wants out of Calgary. And I'm all over that right away. I know you guys know that. But I want to hear what you guys think. If Matt Tkachuk's available, I think I know the answer already. But if you want him, what do you give up? We just lost Jack. So, Kyle, Matt Tkachuk, you want him?
That's easy. Buy Konechny. I'll take Tkachuk all day long. Straight up for Konechny.
Yeah.
Straight up.
I compared the two earlier today on, in case you missed it. And, hey, Konechny's a good player. Is he what Flyers Twitter would have you believe he is? No. But he's still a good player. Is he Matt Tkachuk? I think he wants to be. I don't think he is. I think if there's an opportunity to go out and trade for Matt Tkachuk, if he wants to leave Calgary, you absolutely go get him. He's everything this team needs. What do you think?
I think everything that guy brings to the game is everything the Flyers seem to be lacking severely in. The physical department, the grit, the goal scoring. Boy can score. Don't get it twisted. That guy can score some goals. He's not bad with the puck. He's ferocious on the forecheck, and he's pretty good neutral zone and in his own zone.
And you know what? I thought he was on the smaller side, and by smaller I mean 5'9", 5'10". He's a big boy.
What is he? 6'1"?
6'2". He's listed 6'2". Probably in real life he's 6'1", but he's over 6 foot.
Yeah, I mean, you can't go wrong with adding a player that fits the bill for Philadelphia. And I don't care what the freaking analytics people say and how Broad Street hockey is no longer. I don't know if you've been watching any of these playoffs, but the teams that seem to be winning seem to be the teams getting away with all the physical shit.
Yeah. I don't see how people can still say that the Lightning adding guys like Maroon, Gaudreau,
Shen.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, you got Shen. Savard plays a physical game.
It's not a coincidence. It's not.
Coleman plays a physical game.
You need these guys.
Absolutely. And obviously we're fully expecting Brady Tkachuk, or is it Matt Tkachuk, If he comes here for whatever reason, I don't think the Flyers are going to pull that off because I just don't think I feel like Chucky has his mindset on what he wants to do this offseason, and it was set before the season even ended, and that's what he's going to be doing. I don't think he's going to be going after a guy like Tkachuk.
Real quick, Kyle, we have a comment over here. Question is, if TK gets traded for Tkachuk, does Patrick crawl up TK's ass to go with him to Western Canada?
I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a package deal and we get a pick back. I wouldn't be mad at that at all. Konechny, Patrick to Calgary, get a pick back. Whatever. I'll take it.
At that, go ahead.
I was like, at this point, what's Patrick's ceiling? Because it ain't a number 1 or a number 2 center anymore. I'm sorry, everybody. That ship sails.
Yeah, and that's an interesting thing to talk about too. But first, let's bring on our guest here, the star guest of the show, Mr. Russ Joy. What's up, Russ? Take a bow.
Unmute yourself, too.
I got you, dude.
Is that better? Now? Gentlemen, hello. Bid thee adieu once again.
Beautiful.
What a beautiful time to cover the Flyers and to talk about the Flyers. I am so excited. You know, nothing makes you feel better about the Flyers' future than watching these playoffs.
Oh my God.
They're this close. They're this close.
It's demoralizing, isn't it? Because you realize just how far away they are.
It's demoralizing if you're completely and utterly incompetent or you're so far into your fanboy zone that you cannot see the light of day. If you live in the land of the rational, you say, yes, actually, this is a good thing because anybody with a brain who can objectively go into this and take a look at where the Flyers stand, say, wow, this team actually needs some stuff. Good. Maybe we'll actually see some changes this offseason. You know, Chucky's not going to sit on the hands, you know, he's not going to sit inanimate like Chucky the doll in Child's Play. No, he's going to be like murderous Chucky, like in a good way. We don't usually like murder, but in this case, this could be fine.
But Russ, I mean, come on. We're not that far off if you go off of advanced analytics like Corsi. Our Corsi was pretty good last year.
I always like, by the way, first of all, I didn't even see the Forza Azzurri hat on your head.
Oh, of course.
Blessed, you know, good. I'm glad, you know, we can have this moment.
Yes.
It's not even, listen, I think that like advanced analytics get a bad rap. And like, I know on our show, we've gotten called out a few times, like people saying that, you know, we're just Neanderthals about hockey. And I'm like, no, I think there's real value in analytics. The problem is that a lot of the analytics that teams use, that front offices use, are not publicly available. So it's kind of like, let's say I used to be a teacher, right? I'm not a teacher anymore. But like in theory, if you go in and you say, here are all of the potential answers for the questions, and here are the questions as well. You can have both of those things, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're putting somebody in an advantageous spot to be able to connect those dots in between. And what you have with, you know, the publicly available data and analytics and that of like what the front offices have, you might have something that like eventually can get you to something they might sort of look at. Like, of course, he has value to some extent, but like when you start comparing it to like, I don't know, some of the more micro stats, it's like, those numbers might be the end result. They might be something that gets you most of the way there, but it's not what the teams are using to evaluate to get to that point, if it makes sense. It's like there's a whole middle zone that has to happen. And by the way, like there's also another way to look at this, which is, you know, advanced analytics might be like really hyper focused on this area over here, and what the teams have available to them and what they actually value is like way over here. So it doesn't even matter, you know? But hey, it looks good in graphs. That when the graphics are really nice and they pop and there's red and there's blue and there's sometimes green and orange, it's a really great thing. People like graphics. It is statistically proven.
My absolute favorite, not to harp on the advanced analytics too much longer here, but my absolute favorite is goals per 5v5 estimated. And everybody seems to have like a 1.68, but only scores 15 goals a year. I'm like, that doesn't even add up. Like,
I don't understand this stuff either.
We
were talking, I think it was last week. We had our buddy Dan Silver on. Hey, Jack's back. We had Jack. You missed it. You missed everything.
What happened?
We were talking about the fanboys. You missed it.
Liars. No way.
I've been told that
Oh,
Jack
man.
is actually just a fanboy. It's very strange. Jim sent me a DM and he's like, I don't know what to do about Jack. He's such a fanboy. He just can't let it go. He really just has this burning love for everybody on the team, and they're all his children, and
Oh,
he just
yeah.
can't let them go.
Absolutely.
That was
To
true.
a T.
We're
When I
we're
was
actually here for an
12.
intervention, Jack.
I'm no longer that person.
Oh shit.
Jack just looked like when the Weeknd did the halftime show. They kind of like the station. Whoa! All right.
I love the
Sorry,
Weekend.
guys.
No, let's bring it back real quick before we move on to what we were talking about before for Jack. Seth Jones. We had Dan Silver on last week, and we were talking about Seth Jones, how he's bad in the defensive entries. His defensive entries are bad. He struggles with that, and for whatever reason, that's enough of a reason for people not to want this guy. And that to me is reading too much into analytics, too much into advanced stats. Because when you watch the guy play, he's a solid defenseman. He's going to help your team win, right? Or am I wrong?
Yeah. No, you're right. And my favorite was somebody put together a video clip of him backing in. There was like, I don't know, like 10 videos of handpicked videos of him backing in, and they weren't even good. Yeah, he backed up a little bit, but he kept the guys to the outside. The shots came from the boards. I'm like, yeah, you can back in a little bit as long as you keep your gap enough to you force them to the outside. That's perfectly fine. That's defense. That's how you play it sometimes.
That was the BSH article, and it was titled, "He plays defense like McDonald." If that's not clickbait, I don't know what
McDonald falls down more than he played defense ever.
That's not my point, though. Like a lot of what was said I could see in the handpicked videos, but for the most part, if you're titling your article that, it's a big head scratcher. Like, he plays defense like McDonald. Did you actually watch McDonald, or is this one little thing that you're blowing up into something else? And I think that's what it was, because some of the analytics actually back. If you read Charlie O'Connor's article from The Athletic, it backs a lot of what Seth Jones does and what the Flyers need, such as getting the puck out of the zone. So there's a lot to like there. So I don't know. The whole thing is just kind of silly.
Well, I mean, you just brought up the difference between, and I'm not a big paywall guy, but you brought up the difference between somebody who is down, covers the team, and understands the things that he's writing about, and then somebody who doesn't. It's kind of simple.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
I don't even know who wrote the other thing, but like the concept of saying that like somebody's play is akin to a guy who was massively overpaid and a guy who was like at best, like in his best season, is maybe like a number 3 defenseman, and you're going to compare that to a guy who for a long time was widely regarded as a top 10, top 15 defenseman in the league and had, real upside. They don't compare. It's stupid. It's just,
No.
it's clickbaity. And like, I get it. Cause right now, if you're a hockey based website, there's not a whole lot to write about if you're covering the Flyers. Unless you want to write a deep dive into some kid playing in Sweden right now and like why he'd be a beneficial pick late in the draft. I'm sorry, like I covered the team and I couldn't give a damn. So I get it. But like at some point you're also doing a disservice to your readership by trying to to compare the two. It's just dumb.
Yeah.
It's like trying to get your readership incensed enough where they're going to like, I don't know, try to go to social media and start to to drag the guy. I don't get it. Like Seth Jones makes this team better. It's not even a matter of, he's not like a Chris Pronger. Like he's not going to have that kind of impact, but practically no defenseman in the league right now are going to have that kind of impact. The game is different. So Seth Jones is a solid upgrade to this team. You'd be happy to have him. You'd be lucky to have him. Like, lest we forget, this defensive core was not good last year. When people go, and the same ones who are trashing Seth Jones are also the ones to say that Shane Gostisbehere might have been the best and most consistent defenseman a year ago. Folks, we have a problem. That's also cognitive dissonance. Welcome. Welcome.
Now, all that being said, also, I was a big Seth Jones proponent. Like, I really wanted Seth Jones here. There was a report out today. Seth Jones says no matter where he goes, he wants to test the free agent market. I don't know if that's factual or if he's just talking. But, I mean, that makes me a little more hesitant to go out and overspend for a 1-year type deal. You know what I mean?
I mean, there are two ways to look at that, right? I mean, you can look at that and say a team is more likely to give up better prospects or to give up better position players, actual roster players and draft picks, if they know that they're going to have you beyond the 1 year. And a team can ask for a whole lot more when the guy's under contract and the thought is that he's going to re-sign. If Jones really wants to behoove whatever team acquires him, you say something like this, and all of a sudden, maybe one or two of those roster players that might have been going the other way are no longer on the table. You can't blame a guy when he gets 1 year away, but also like a lot of it depends on the situation he goes to. You're telling me that if like Colorado figured out a way to make the numbers work, he wouldn't immediately re-sign with Colorado? I don't believe that. You know what I mean? So I think in theory, you or your camp puts that out because you're trying to limit whatever the market might be for bad teams wanting to acquire you in the hopes that like a big money signing is going to be the thing that's going to keep you in town. But if a good team with a good situation that also happens to have money available is the one who goes out and acquires your rights, it's hard to walk away from guaranteed money. Any team who goes out and acquires him is going to have that conversation immediately. And if you don't think that at this point, a lot of these front offices are already in communication with the agent, you'd be wrong.
I'm assuming, because I got cut there for a second, we're talking about Seth Jones, the report that said he didn't want to re-sign unless it was Colorado.
Well, he didn't say anything about Colorado. He said any team that he goes to, he wants to explore free agency.
It was Hockey Buzz then reported that unless it was Colorado, but essentially his mother came out on Twitter.
Yeah, his mom roasted Hockey Buzz. So
completely roasted him, copy pasted, wrote false, and all options were
okay.
Yeah,
I didn't. Again, I
you're
said
fake news. Excuse me, you're fake news. Very fake. So, excuse me. Not a very nice Eklund. I like other ones. Not this one. Not a very good one. Back to you.
Got it.
Very
Thank
good,
you.
Russ.
I appreciate it.
that was good.
Your podcast just got canceled, guys.
Well,
God, I can't believe
at that, why don't we introduce our game here? What do you guys think?
I'm down.
What?
I said I'm down.
All right, so we have a game here for you, Russ. We have a list of names for you, and the game is called So You're Saying There's a Chance. So we're going to name a player, and you're going to say if you think the Flyers have a realistic chance to acquire this guy or not.
Okay. I'm in.
So you're telling me there's a chance?
All right. My video's...
Yeah!
All right, so that's the game. I'm on a delay. I don't know what the hell's going on my end. Am I coming through clear?
Yeah.
You're fine.
You're fine. I'm the one who keeps getting booted.
All right, good. All right, so the first name on our list is right-handed defenseman from Minnesota, Matt Dumba. Do the Flyers have a shot at acquiring this guy? Yes or no?
Sure.
Yes.
Now, is
Sure as a yes.
is that something you think that they should do, could do, good reaction or a good plan B or C for Jones or Hamilton or anybody that you wanted more than Dumba? Really,
It's a plan C.
see,
I mean, if that's going to be the big defensive acquisition, then we may as well not play next season.
yeah,
That's not a needle mover. That's a patchwork move. It certainly doesn't do anything to really change your ceiling. So I don't know why it would. That actually makes a lot of sense if, and I'm sure we'll get into like as some of these other names come together, we can talk about this, but like that's a move that you make in conjunction with another one. That's a move where like you're looking to solidify like your second pair and you've gone out and already made the acquisition of a top pair defenseman. And like, depending on how some of these other moves go, one of or both of Phil Myers and Travis Sanheim are gone, and you need somebody reliable on the second pair. Like, okay, then it makes sense not to put him on your top pair. And if that's the case, then this is setting up bad already.
right. And that's kind of how I felt about it. And it was the first name to come out the second that first Seth Jones report came out about him not signing an extension. And then on top of that, the whole Fletcher drafting him. the Wild might have an issue with the expansion draft, and it makes more sense for them to move Dumba, and they apparently like TK. That was just the first name to surface after that first Seth Jones report. So I think that's why he got thrown out there. But I agree with you. If he's the top guy they add, yeah, we're in trouble.
Yeah, and it's also not like he makes peanuts
sure.
either.
So
Like
there's
Yeah, no,
$6 million annually. So it's
it's
like
it's a lot.
That's a lot for like a second pair defenseman.
whenever somebody says peanuts on here, I always think they say the other word.
Ace Ventura.
Do you guys
Walnuts,
get that at all, or
Walnuts?
just me?
Cashews? Or...
Yeah. Like, did he just say the P word? No. All right. Next guy on the list.
Pterodactyl?
Let's go with.
I'll take a fucking pterodactyl on defense.
Oh, that's
You
one.
just send them over.
That's like
nobody's gonna be standing in front of the net. Nobody.
Well, guys, it just so happens the Flyers have a real secret weapon next year. It's the pterodactyl that's going to fly down through the Wells Fargo Center. Oh no, the Lightning have come to town. They've already put up 7 goals on Carter Hart. What are we going to do? You know, it's great. Excellent.
Jesus. Jimmy.
Christ. What is happening?
I don't know, but
Am I
I think-
frozen?
I think
I've
the
gone
I
tracks
just
were
want to know
that
that you
way.
guys can hear and see me.
Yeah.
I've gone rogue. Jim's on a delay. Kyle's face is blacked out. Jack's video keeps jumping. We're
This
great.
show's going just like we planned. I had this whole game set up and it's just going in flames.
What's your next name?
All right, let's
Not
throw
often.
another name out there.
Not often does this train stay on the tracks.
Let's go with Jack Eichel as our next name.
Bring me. You're tired. You're poor. Yearning to breathe free. I will happily be the safe harbor for each and every player who wants out of their terrible situation, that has legitimate talent and can be bought for less than what their market value should dictate because they're miserable in their situation. I would love Jack Eichel. That's totally fine. Can the Flyers get him? Yes. Do they have the assets to get him? Yes. Do they have the draft picks to get him? Yes. Do they theoretically have prospects who, like, I may or may not have soured on a bit? Yes. Is there a ginormous injury concern and a concern about a spinal surgery that has never been done on an NHL player before? Yes. But do you make that deal on the thought that you're going to potentially get a guy who turns the entire franchise around? You do. Every time.
Yeah, guys like this don't become available. And the fact that teams, and maybe it has something to do with the neck surgery and whatnot, but like a team like Anaheim has already said, oh, you want Trevor Zegras? Yeah, non-starter. A guy of Eichel's caliber is like, you give them whatever you can. Like, it doesn't matter. I think he teeters with generational. I don't know if he's that, but he's close. You put him on a team with good players and just watch sparks fly as long as he's healthy, like you're saying. And I've even seen it rumored a little bit, like maybe he's overplaying that just to make sure he gets out of Buffalo. And it's got to be this year, because after this year, that's when the no movement clause kicks in. So, I mean, if there's a possibility to get him, I know a plethora of other moves would have to happen, and we still have to focus on defense. If there's a legitimate chance at this, they have to at least kick the tires. I know they're rumored as a dark horse. I just don't know how serious it is.
Are you all right, Jim?
So, yeah, I just want to see if I'm on a delay or anything. I just want to see if somebody going to talk. Can
Jim,
I
hold
talk?
up a
I don't know
one.
what's going to happen. So I'm just giving it a second before.
Oh boy, that's like a 5 or 6 second delay. Woo! All right, quick.
How can you
somebody say
tell?
something
How can you
about Jim.
tell?
I can't. I don't know.
Do you guys see it? Jim, hold up a 1. As soon as you hold up a 1, we'll know that your delay is done.
Oh my goodness. 5 seconds.
5 second delay. This is what we're experiencing right now is exactly what happens on NBC Sports Philly. Jake Voracek drops an F-bomb. Nobody pays attention. It goes live over the air. That's where we're at right now.
Oh my goodness.
The Eichel thing,
Yeah.
to bring it back really
Chris
quick,
says I'm fine on Facebook.
I don't know. The Eichel thing is something that I get the fear. I do. I think the people that say if he were really a good player, he would have elevated Buffalo are out of their minds. It's really easy to try to game plan against one guy. It's easy to stack your best defensive pairing against one guy. And realistically, that's what Buffalo is. I mean, you could kind of make a case that like Brian Hart's a competent player. You could have tried to make the case, I guess, that Taylor Hall was a competent player. He certainly looked better once he was out of Buffalo. But Eichel's the kind of guy that doesn't come along a lot. I think the way that I would kind of, in a way, compare this is something I'm going through right now, the housing market. In theory, you should be able to get something at a solid price. You shouldn't have to worry about inflation. The inverse is kind of true here with Jack Eichel. You should not be able to get Jack Eichel for anything less than like a number of legitimate roster contributors right now, a top prospect or two, and then at least probably 2 first-round picks. The fact is that because that injury issue is lingering out there, and because everyone is aware and is acutely aware of the fact that he has no interest in staying in Buffalo, and Buffalo is really under the gun to make a deal, and they don't want to pay $10 million to a guy who's going to be disgruntled when they could theoretically go out and acquire other assets, you could theoretically try to get him on the cheap. It shouldn't work like this, but it can. The only issue that you're going to run into, and Jack, you're right, because this is the same thing that Anthony said over on our show, is like you don't know how much the threat of the surgery is legitimate, that is what he wants, versus using that as a playing chip of sorts to try to force Buffalo's hand. There's nothing to say that if Jack Eichel gets traded to a contender or a team that could theoretically be a contender, that within 2 weeks he says, you know what, I met with this team's medical team, and we think that there's another way to treat this without surgery.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're Buffalo, there's nothing you can do at that point. The trade's already been executed. Now, I would just hope on a personal level for the guy that, like, if he really does mean that he wants this surgery, he's got to be in a lot of discomfort. That's not a kind of surgery that you're going to go out and have as like a routine. This isn't getting your gallbladder out, right? So Chuck Fletcher and crew are going to have to make the same determination that every other team is going to have to make. Is it worth potentially giving up whatever these assets are with the thought that, like, he might not play next year and with the outside chance that he never plays again? If I look at this objectively and I look at what this team is and I look at like how far away they actually are and how many moves away they are, I think you make the move. If it blows up in your face, you tried. That really is it. Or you can sit back, you can stand pat, and you can be a bubble playoff team, which I don't know if anybody's noticed, but that's what this organization has mostly been for 2 decades. So that's where we're at, or at least for a decade and going on 12 years, 13 years.
We're into our second decade.
Yeah.
of being a bubble team.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if it's something they really start to take seriously, even with the risk, because the price isn't like, Provorov 13th overall and Farabee or something crazy, you seriously have to consider it. I would take the risk just because of everything you said where this team is at. They need major changes. They're not going to draft at the top of the draft and get their own version of the guy or whatnot. They're going to get a lot of good two-way forwards and whatnot and just do the best they can and hope that our defense develops. Cam York, do I really see him as a number one defenseman type, first pairing even? I don't know. I think he's more of hopefully a second pairing defenseman. So, great if he's better, but I'll take it if he is that. But I don't see that superstar potential. So where are we going to get it from? Where are we going to find this value? If something like this falls into your lap, you have to seriously consider it. And I do hope that if this is all serious and other teams are a little gun shy, they just go for it. And so I guess I'll finish it with Russ. Do you think the Flyers, Chuck Fletcher's Flyers in the real world, are actually considering this, or are they just kind of, as Elliot Friedman, I believe, said, they're just in on everything?
I don't know if Fletcher has the chutzpah. I don't know. I don't know if he has the cojones. I don't know if he has the testicular fortitude. I don't know if he has the intestinal fortitude. I don't know. There's nothing. at this point in Chuck Fletcher's tenure thus far in Philadelphia that makes me think that he's a swing for the fences kind of guy. Now, the only way that changes is if Dave Scott looks at this team and looks at where they're trending and looks at the fact that it was incredibly difficult for them to sell tickets, even though people were dying to get into a building for over a year, and they were still selling tickets to brokers to try to get this done. And they were still handing out comp tickets to many, many people to get them into Wells Fargo Center. If I'm being realistic about it, if I'm the owner of the team, I sit back and think, what is it that we have to do to try to get butts in seats? And it can't be just ancillary moves. A bubble team is not going to get it done. The Sixers just imploded. We're all aware of that. But they're going to retool. There's nobody right now who thinks that Daryl Morey is going to run the Sixers back as is. So it stands to reason the Sixers are going to be a top 3 team, top 2 team in the Eastern Conference next year. That's what you have within your building as part of internal competition. If you needed extrinsic motivation, it's right there for you. That is the thing that you're being compared against. Whether it's fair or not, that's the team that you're being compared against. Would I rather spend my money as a family to go to a cheaper game for a much better team in the Sixers, or would I rather shell out a whole lot more money to go see an inferior product with the Flyers? That's the real kind of thing that this team has to decide. So if you're Dave Scott and the conversation has been had with Chuck, we need to make some moves. We need to get somebody in here. We have to have somebody that we can actually sell to the fans. Then Jack Eichel's that move. There's nobody else. I can't imagine that there's anybody else on this list who would make a bigger splash, a bigger name, a bigger top-end talent kind of splash than Jack Eichel. That's your guy. And it's not even close.
Like I said earlier, these guys do not become available for a reason. They're franchise guys.
So wait 1 second. So
The fuck?
There he is.
Jimmy.
There he is.
sorry, delayed again.
There it is.
Now you're interrupting me.
There we go. Go ahead. You go back to it.
Long story short,
Look at me.
I completely
Look at me.
agree.
I am the captain now.
I completely agree with you. And the more we talk about it, the more I kind of get like, what if they really are considering it? Like that would do wonders for ticket prices, like you said, but the team as well. It's just a general shakeup. So, I mean, I'm not going to throw. What do you, before we throw more names out, I want to have a realistic idea of what you think is going to happen at the expansion draft. Are you hoping that they can just get Seattle to take JVR, without having to ship anything else along, or are we swinging for the fences and trying to get them to take Voracek? Or what is your gut feeling on the expansion draft at this time?
If you're a GM, you have to decide if you're going to try to play chicken with Seattle or not. And that's the truth. I mean, they're going to leave Jake Voracek and James Van Riemsdyk unprotected. Now, there was that report a week ago that said, was it Friedman who put it out or LeBrun who put out that Seattle's going to look to take the lowest possible salary, like build a legitimate team, because there's an inherent pressure because Vegas was so good out of the gate. They can't just like sit back like a normal expansion team would and hope that within a couple of years they're, playoff contenders maybe. If you're a GM, if you're Chuck Fletcher, you're putting out 2 guys in Van Riemsdyk and Voracek who could, one, bring name recognition and instant credibility. Van Riemsdyk as a locker room presence, as a union rep, as a guy who was involved in getting the NHL back to play in the bubble. There are a lot of positives that go around him, and plus he's a goal scorer. He's streaky as hell, but he's still a goal scorer. And then in Jake Voracek, you have a really dynamic guy. Now, is that a guy that you want to build your franchise around? Probably not. Is that still a star player potential? Yeah, it is. You can have those 2 guys sitting out there and pretty much dare Seattle not to take them. That is a hard sell. Like if you're the Seattle fan base and depending on how the rest of the draft is going, like those guys are out there available and it costs you nothing except money. Seattle's a smart sports town. Like they're not going to be thrilled if you go and like pluck away like Shane Gostisbehere. Right? Like that's not going to move the needle for them. If you really wanted to protect against it, like if you really wanted to guarantee one of those guys is gone, then you work out a side deal ahead of the expansion draft to take one of those guys off the books. But honestly, I feel like the public scrutiny that you'd be facing if those guys are available and you don't take them is probably going to at least put some heat on Seattle to make a move and to take one of those guys, whether a side deal's worked out or not.
Yeah, I mean, I hope it's Voracek. Even if they do have to give them something, hopefully not something significant. I just feel like it's going to be JVR at the end of the day, whether something goes with it or not. So that's roughly $7 million, we're saying. So
7 on the dot.
7 on the dot. Have we discussed a couple names? I had got kicked a bit there. Just the Flyers, do they pivot back to a Dougie Hamilton and play that game?
I don't think so.
I hope not. I hope not. Overpay
Why?
for somebody who's, to me, is a below average defenseman. I just don't like the way he plays. I don't think he fits here. I don't see where he's just an overhyped guy to me. I don't like the guy. Not a
Where
fan.
do you fall on the comparison to him being just like an elevated version of Shane Gostisbehere?
Yes and no. I think he's better defensively, but he's not too much better defensively. He's certainly bigger. He plays a little bit bigger than Shane. Offensively, he's, way more consistent than Shane Gostisbehere, but that's not the hardest feat to accomplish. I think if you could combine Shane Gostisbehere with Shane Gostisbehere, you'd get somewhere around Dougie Hamilton.
Let's go to Jim. Jim, what do you think of Dougie Hamilton?
Fantastic.
He just freeze on the dot.
No, he's actually frozen.
Oh, we bothered him, and now he's frozen.
All right, well, wait, there he is. Wait, maybe there we go. Jim, how do you feel about Dougie Hamilton?
Wait, this is happening live? Like,
just answer
you're
this
saying
question.
stuff and I'm moving right now.
Yep, I hear you. Now, Jim,
Yeah,
how do you feel about
I can
Dougie
hear you.
Hamilton? Go.
Never mind.
There he goes. All right, well, we tried.
God damn.
At some point, do we just end?
Everybody's
Do
a
we
robot.
restart? Like, what do we do? I don't know.
All right.
Dougie, like, I don't know. It's your call.
I don't know. I just reset the Wi-Fi.
All right.
You gotta wire that in. Dougie Hamilton might theoretically cost you less.
Can you hear
than
me?
Seth Jones. Yes, we can hear you.
You're interrupting.
I tried to cue him up before.
I know.
You know?
I blame the goddamn pterodactyl.
I lose my connection.
That's exactly right. That pterodactyl. He went into Jim's house and ripped him out, don't you know? Dougie Hamilton maybe costs you less than Seth Jones would because
Not
he's
much.
not under because he's not under contract, right? So that maybe that plays. The problem is with Dougie Hamilton, like, one, I don't know if he can play in Philadelphia. The pressure isn't exactly the same in Carolina. If you're seeing defensive miscues of any kind, or you're trying to sell to the casual fan that you've brought in this top pair defenseman and he goes out and plays, like at a mediocre level of what he's capable of, the first thing
Which
that's
he
going to
will.
happen is people are going to say it's a bust. They're going to complain and they're going to say this was a waste of money. And in his first year, he's going to get dogged with a $9 or $10 million, price tag, and he's never going to find success. Like, you're going to bury the guy before he even, gets 20 games into the season, unless he lights the world on fire to start. You pair him with Ivan Provorov, there is a chance that is a lockdown, really excellent top pair in this league. It brings Carter Hart back to whatever he was a couple of years ago. And like, maybe all of a sudden everybody's on the Dougie, the Dougie bandwagon. I don't know. But I'm not so sure that that's like a slam dunk. It should be. Like, in theory, getting Dougie Hamilton, if he's playing at 100%, if he's playing at his max potential, then it's a great signing. But the possibility that it could go sideways so quickly, to me, isn't worth looking at. And I think that's why you're seeing he's not their priority. They'll kick the tires. They'll have the conversation. If things don't go well in the Seth Jones market, yeah, they'd be stupid not to explore it. I just don't think that, I don't think that he's a number one priority for them. I don't know where he really falls right now, but I think they have a number of other defensemen ahead of him. He's just kind of like, if it's there, if it's available and none of this other stuff works out, he's a heck of an option to go back to.
Who do you think their first option is on their list?
It's probably Seth Jones.
Yeah,
That's where I was leaning.
I got that too, but Anthony's got me thinking maybe there's another name, and this is going to kill Jim right now. But what do you feel about Ryan Ellis?
Ryan Ellis is fine. Like, why would Ryan Ellis be a problem?
Oh,
Why is Jim
Jim
gonna?
wants him, but he can't participate in the conversations.
Wait, I think I
got
can
it.
now. Am I good?
Yeah, I think he's
You're
good.
good.
He's not
You're
on as
good.
much of a.
Finally.
Jim, hold up a
We're-
one. Hold up a one. Quick.
Wow, we're 40.
There we go.
I had to
Alright,
switch
good.
my Wi-Fi, son of a
Ladies and
bitch.
gentlemen, Jim has joined the program here.
At the
Go ahead.
41
Put
minutes.
me in, coach.
No, we're talking
Yeah,
about
Jim, how do you feel about Ryan Ellis?
I love him. I want him. My number one
How do you
guy.
feel about Dougie Hamilton?
He's probably my third favorite guy, if I'm being honest.
your
But I won't be angry if they go get him either. He'll be fun to watch, I guess. You know.
I guess.
Until he turns into Shane Gostisbehere.
Yeah.
with a double the price tag.
That's kind of my
I don't-
stance with Dougie Hamilton because you're kind of putting all your free agent money chips into that one basket there, and it's Dougie Hamilton's not going to help you win a cup with this roster. That's kind of where I am with that.
Ryan Ellis is also like when we talked about Matt Dumba off the top, like Ellis, I think is a better defenseman, can be a legitimate top pair defenseman, and he costs you $250,000 more a year. So like when you're weighing those two options, it's like a slam dunk. And Chuck Fletcher had conversations with Nashville about multiple players, and one of them was Ryan Ellis. So you've already theoretically laid the groundwork of what a potential deal could have looked like midseason. You didn't pull the trigger on it for a number of different reasons. They're going to have that conversation this offseason. If they haven't already, they're going to kick those tires again. Now, the more interesting thing is what happens if you start moving money around. You dare Seattle to take one of Van Riemsdyk or for a check. You clear off some other money, and you go into next season having made a trade for Seth Jones, and then having made another trade that gets you Ryan Ellis.
You have a
It's a lot of-
fantastic
it's a lot of-
defense.
It's a lot of young players, and it's a lot of prospects going. But like, if you decide that your number one focus next year isn't on trying to fortify the top six, it's rolling with what you've got. And really more than anything, it's about getting Carter Hart back and getting Carter Hart to that next level by putting a legitimate defensive core in front of him that isn't going to fall off once that top pair is off the ice. And that top pair is going to be legitimate and reliable and not what it was last year. Like, if it's me, I look at that and I say, if I can make those moves without having to gut my current NHL roster beyond reason, and I can bring in two defensemen like that at that caliber and fix Carter Hart, that's more important than going out and getting Jack Eichel. Because it's a guarantee.
Yeah,
The Eichel thing has the question mark.
Right. And yeah, the way this team is built for sure. And it also, I mean, this goes to Carter Hart as well, but it helps Provorov and Sanheim as well. Who we presumably keep Sanheim. I think a lot of us are thinking if we trade for Seth Jones, Myers will be the one we hopefully ship, even though they probably asked for Sanheim. But yeah, your entire defensive core, your goaltender, build from the net out, and then whatever you have left on offense, which is hopefully not too bad, is what you're saying. I'm ready to move on from Morgan Frost. I mean, we haven't seen enough of the guy from getting these actual proven talented players at a position of need. I mean, of course you trade him. Like, what are we really missing down there? It's not like he's knocking on the door of the NHL in his first year since he's been drafted. It's been a while now, 2017 for God's sake. So yeah, I mean, honestly, when this offseason started, I didn't know how realistic it was, but adding two guys is really what they need to do. I just didn't know the level that it would be. I didn't know if we're talking if we're talking Savard and somebody else, or they just go one and hope it works. But yeah, that would be great because I like both players, especially Jones. I think I like the term for Ellis. He's locked in. You don't have to re-sign him or anything like that. Yeah, I mean, that would be fantastic. I'm all about that. I know Jim is. But, while we're on Nashville, what do you think about Ekholm?
Well, I was going to say, keep in mind, too, likelihood that if they're going to make multiple moves, you might see Travis Sanheim and Phil Myers gone. I wouldn't take that off the table, right? Myers is, $2.25 million annually. Sanheim's an RFA. He'll probably come in somewhere in that 2.5 to 3 range. So like when you think about clearing money off the cap just to pay for one of these guys, those two being gone is going to get you close to Ellis's number. Ekholm's whatever. Like I'm not as high on Ekholm. Like I would rather, if you're going to make a move, make the move for Ellis. I think that Ellis just kind of fits what they're going to do better. I think he's a more reliable defenseman right now. I think he'd be a better fit with Ivan Provorov. Would Ekholm make your team better? Sure. I mean, pretty much anybody would.
I was going to say that.
You know, beggars can't be choosers. It's a low bar to clear. Can't be picky.
I'll throw a crazy name out there since we're saying that beggars can't be choosers. And it's definitely not the number one guy we're looking for. This is just opportunity, trying to make the money work. But because he's from the area, could you see a last chance contract for Anthony DeAngelo?
I was told about a month ago that there had been feelers put out about him. That
So maybe.
So you're saying there's a chance.
Wait for it. Wait.
There it
You're
is.
telling me there's a chance.
All right.
I don't know if I'd be thrilled. I don't know if anybody would really be that thrilled.
I'll take him on my third pairing at $1 million.
Oh,
I
here we
think
go.
if you wanted to try to get the diametric opposite of the Kate Smith anger, bring him in. But then you'll have everybody pissed off. Then it's a real then you've decided to scorch earth your fan base. I don't know. I don't know how much he helps. I think again, so much of this comes down to if you're getting close to the season, he's still unsigned. You weren't able to go out and make any impactful moves in your top 4 defense. Then maybe as a training camp invite and you see what it is. I don't think that there's going to be.
That's a
I don't think there's
that's a non-option.
Yeah,
that's
I don't
a non-option.
see there being
no.
I don't think there's a market for him. I don't think the Flyers are really going to be that interested unless they don't make a big move or unless they have a bunch of injuries. And I mean quite a few injuries going into the season. That's maybe when those feelers become something real. And then you're just effectively trying to make sure the guy doesn't implode, say anything stupid, tweet anything stupid, offend anybody, light the world on fire, piss off the fans. You just there are so many things that go into him beyond whether or not he even helps, really more than marginally increase your team's ceiling.
I got a question for you real quick. What is the difference between putting out a feeler on a player and actually inquiring about a player? Are they the same thing?
No. So putting feelers out about a player doesn't necessarily just involve conversations with the agent. It could be anybody from their circle. It can be people who are organizational sources around the team. Versus inquiring about typically implies direct contact with a front office.
Okay.
Inquiring about the availability of a player, at least the way that I would define it.
So a feeler is not necessarily as serious than as somebody inquiring about.
I mean, feelers could be, somebody within the organization saying to the agent, if this were to happen at some point, would he have interest in playing here? Would he keep himself out of trouble? But that's vastly different than, a good player that's under contract trying to inquire of the other organization if they'd be inclined to move him or not.
Okay. I already knew the difference between the two, obviously, but for the viewers who may not have known, just for them.
All right. I guess we're coming close to the end of the list here. And some of these guys hit me as they better do something bigger, but I'll just throw it out there because he's a UFA. David Savard. I don't know how much interest they expressed beforehand, but can you see him as a secondary move if they maybe do with Eichel or something, or maybe Seth Jones and him or anything of that nature?
Maybe. I mean, what's his market really going to be?
I don't know.
I mean, that
guys who missed out, big guys or other guys, I should say.
Yeah, I don't see him being a first week signer, a first week signee. So in theory, by the time things hit, you would think that you've already had conversations with the team that you're going to have conversations with. maybe he's there. He also might decide to hold out for a better contract. Like we did see last year, it didn't work out for many players, but like you could hold out longer, getting closer to camp, waiting to see if there are any injuries, see if any contending teams, need a player and are willing to go out and spend the capital later in the offseason. He'd be fine. Like he would certainly be an upgrade of some sort, but he's not going to be somebody, again, who I think really changes things all that much for you. It's a solid veteran signing. It's not much more than that. I'm actually surprised when you said the thing about like a guy from around here, and the guy's name's been like going across the ticker this whole time.
Oh, we're gonna get to him.
That John.
Don't worry about that.
Oh, okay, so he's on the list. Okay, good.
Oh, absolutely.
The list off the top of my head. Jimmy's been MIA. I've been trying.
Filling in for me there. Question for you. Actually, not a question. So I just need you to kind of help me out with this a little bit because I'm bracing myself for this is the 2020 Flyers, 2021 Flyers, cap era Flyers. They're not making any significant moves, right? I'm bracing myself for that. I fully expect them to bring back Provorov, Sanheim, Myers. I don't know, but I fully expect the top 6, top 9 forward group to look the same. And, they bring in tweaks to kind of complement some of the guys they already have. Those are the big moves that, in my mind, this is what this team's going to do. Even though the fan in me is seeing all these names, Matt Tkachuk, Jack Eichel, Johnny Gaudreau, Seth Jones, all these names flying around who the Flyers could be interested in and this and that. And I'm like, yes, this is the offseason. This is the time. This is the most important offseason in however many years. They're going to change the face of the franchise. Everyone's going to be different. We got a reason to be excited. What do you think, Russ? Do you see guys getting turned over like that? Or do you see them realistically trading? Realistically, I'm asking you honestly, are they really going to trade Travis Sanheim and Phil Myers in the same offseason? Are they really going to blow it up like that? Is that really going to happen? Do you really think?
Well, let me ask you a question. Why would you want to blow this team up? They were the number 1 seed going into the playoffs 2 years ago.
That's what I'm afraid of, dude.
Yeah.
That's what I'm afraid. Because it's good to be positive, but you can't be delirious.
Listen, if you want to follow that kind of childish fanboy thoughts, Yariv Woloch, I'm sure, will write something about it at Flyers Nitty Gritty at some point in the next 2 weeks, telling us that we're all delusional and that the Flyers are going to win the Stanley Cup if they make no moves because everybody's great and everybody develops and no prospect has ever failed before. Where we live here in the reality, there's probably some truth to what you said. We want to think that there's going to be turnover. We want to believe that Chuck Fletcher is going to make moves. I truly do think that despite the fact that I don't believe he necessarily has the typical chutzpah cojones to go out and make the kinds of radical moves he needs to make, I think that it's realistic that there have been conversations about not necessarily his job status for this year, but if this team is a meddling team again next year, there could be legitimate problems because he wasn't brought in to be a guy to just kind of keep kicking the can down the road. He was brought in here to be a win now GM with a win now coach. And if you don't make those moves, you're automatically starting next season on a bad foot with Alain Vigneault because Vigneault's smart enough to know this team as currently constructed has problems and is not a Stanley Cup contender. So will they trade both Myers and Sanheim in the same offseason? Probably not, unless you're making moves for, one has to go in the Eichel deal. If you're going to make an Eichel move, that has to happen. If you're going to go out and you're going to make a move for a Ryan Ellis or for a Seth Jones, one of them is probably going to have to go there. So part of it comes down to what does that second pair look like? That's why I said, sometimes you're looking at potential secondary moves, whether it's a Savard free agency, whether it's going out and trying to make a move where you try to bring in a Seth Jones and a Ryan Ellis, whether it's trying to hodgepodge things together a little bit and hope that an Igor Zamula can actually add muscle to his frame and can be a second pair defenseman for this team next year. I don't want to go into a year with Justin Braun on the second pair. That's just me. I do think that they're going to try to get Cam York. I think that they're going to try to get Cam York on this team. I do think that will be a goal from the organization, is to give him as legitimate of a look as any young defenseman in recent memory has gotten to make the roster. I do think that that is a goal. And if Cam York can play third pair minutes and look competent, that's a big boost for you as a team. That makes it more palatable if you think that he and Zamula can at least make those moves, and you can go out and acquire 2 defensemen, at least with one being a legitimate top pair defenseman. That makes it more palatable to have to move Sanheim and Myers in those deals. I think that like maybe the better question is, how much are you going to have to deplete your forward depth to make an impact move? How comfortable are you with parting with Travis Konechny in a move to go out and add a defenseman? Or do you save him for like the Eichel deal? Or do you save him for a Matthew Tkachuk deal? What do you do? And are you comfortable parting with the top 6 forward on this team? Because right now you don't have the organizational depth to go out and you don't have a guy who's knocking on the door that's going to bang down that door and declare himself, I am here and I'm ready to go. That's
You
not
just
like you don't have that right now.
depressed me a little bit right there, Russ, because you know why? Because we've been going through this, stock the cupboard, stock the cupboard.
Mhm.
This is the right way to build a team for 4 or 5 years. And we don't have forward depth. Like, what the hell? How do they not draft 1, 2, 3 guys that are at least ready to come up right now? Wade Allison, I know he's going to be decent. His 2nd round pick came up and, turned heads end of
Played
the
pretty
year.
good. He
But-
played pretty good.
Oh my
That's the
God.
thing though,
dude.
it's not that you, to rephrase for a second, to clarify, it's not that you don't have NHL ready prospects. It's that you don't have killers.
Right.
You need killers. You have no killers.
No.
Like maybe you can develop, like if Forster can develop into a killer, swell. If Allison looks close to what he was and can take it next level, all right, cool. You have like a potential grinder killer. You don't have a sniper in the organization right now who is NHL ready. You haven't done a good job of drafting them. And in fairness, there aren't that many who are available at all times. Goal scoring is hard to find. This team is incredibly inept at finding it, which compounds the issue. That's why the Eichel move, more than anything, is one that like people who are cautious or worried about the injury thing, like that's why that kind of move is one that you really do sell the farm to try to get, because that kind of talent is so rarely available. And yeah, it's $10 million as a cap hit, but like, unless all of a sudden NHL GMs are going to grow balls and like actually make offer sheets to RFAs, which they didn't do with Braden Point. So I don't know why anybody would think they're going to go out and make any kind of an offer sheet this offseason.
No.
GMs just kind of handcuff themselves and like the old boys club by not making those kinds of moves, or at least entertaining it. So that to me is the issue. How much of that forward depth are you willing to deplete in order to get those defensemen?
All of it. Like, what are you really losing if when you say deplete the forward depth? Like, what are you really losing? Like, you're losing who? Like, I would trade.
Konechny. That's it. That's all you got.
Send them. Send Wade
That's
Allison.
it.
If
What's your actual forward depth? If you're actually looking at it, we're losing Voracek or JVR in the expansion draft. I'd like to lose both of them this offseason. But that's
how you going to replace those points, Kyle?
It's not realistic to think that you're.
I mean, we
going
make
to
that
lose
joke,
both
but
of
like
them.
that is a real concern, though. Like I know that it's easy to make that joke, and yes, getting $15.5 million off the books between those two guys would be big.
Yeah.
But you do have to have somebody who replaces them, and that's where like Van Riemsdyk has more value than Voracek does, because for as streaky as he is, he still scores goals, and you don't have that right now.
No.
And if that's the one that Seattle takes, then you have a bunch of guys who are playmakers with a vision and not a lot of guys who put the puck in the back of the net. So if you lose JVR and you have to trade Konechny to get Ellis or Seth Jones or another top pair defenseman, you're already down 2 of your better theoretical scoring forwards. I know Konechny was down last year, but in theory, like that's a hole that you have to fill, that you're doing in order to free up the money to be able to go out and fix the back end, which is arguably more important because it's going to protect your goalie and prevent him from becoming a head case. You don't need that.
Yeah, Fletcher's going to have to really navigate this offseason very carefully. And honestly, a little bit of Moneyball wouldn't help, especially if that's the case. Like having to find value where there really isn't any, because you're right. There's nobody in the minors you can look to and say we need, because Frost is most likely going to be traded, and if he's not, he might not be able to stay healthy. Who's going to step up and do that? And we like guys like Allison, but let's be realistic. At least at this point, they're not guys who put the puck in the net. They're not Goal Caulfield. Let's be real.
Oh boy, here we go.
Here we go. Gonna win the Conn Smythe, but that's okay. But like I don't know where it's going to come. I don't even know what offensive free agents there are at this point. When I just try to think of it, maybe a couple of center depth guys.
Alexander Ovechkin. I'm just kidding. He is a UFA though.
Because we've been so focused on defense, I'm not even sure.
Well, hey, by the way, like the best theoretical prospect you have, who's like quasi prospect because he's played enough in the NHL, where you're like, all right, I mean, this guy does have the skills, is Frost. He just can't stay healthy, and he plays center. The organization is diametrically opposed to playing him at wing. Nolan Patrick is even somehow more useless as a wing than he was as a center. So that one's gone. Like, that's a whole other problem. Like some of the issues that exist between Philly teams, they just continue to rear their heads. Boy, if only Nolan Patrick had developed. Boy, if only Markelle Fultz or Ben Simmons had developed. Instead, you have an albatross. You have and in the case of Patrick, you have somebody who was unwilling to take contact, like Ben Simmons in the paint. And you have somebody who, despite the fact that he liked to coast to the boards to stay out of the fracas around the net, would be much better served being in that fracas as a big body. If you could rely on him, well, then getting rid of a Morgan Frost in a deal does make sense. Had you not handed out a stupid contract to Kevin Hayes, you wouldn't have that number albatross. Had you not given him a no movement clause, you would probably be able to find a suitor this offseason. You're kind of dealing with a whole bunch of situations and problems that you've made your bed. Now you have to lie in it. If you're Fletcher, you have to figure out, how do we change the comforter? How do we change the sheets? And can we throw down a memory foam cover at least for a year to try to make the night's sleep at least somewhat palatable? It's either that or you throw it out and you buy a new one. But those days of the NHL just being able to buy your problems away are gone. So he's got to get creative. And to this point, he has not been a guy in this city who has been able to make those ancillary moves, to play Moneyball, to find the value along the margins. That has not been his thing here. It doesn't mean that he can't do it. It just means that he's really going to have to get creative if he's going to do it. That's why Bill Zito, by the way, is up for it, or was up for Executive of the Year, because they weren't all big flashy moves, but he found value. And the value that he brought relative to the deals that were signed were such that he made those kinds of moves. Fletcher has got to prove in this offseason that he can make them. If he can't, the team is going to be potentially as frustrating as they were this year.
I'm so like on edge and anxious for things to happen, but at the same time, like being a Flyers fan for so long, I'm like I don't want to look like just let me know tomorrow morning what happened. Like I
don't trust him,
because when Hextall got fired, I was big on Zito, and they even interviewed him, but it felt like more of a courtesy interview. Like they knew they were going to take Fletcher, and I just never understood why. I like that next level thinking that, I don't know. And you see it in Florida right now. And you're absolutely right. Guys on 1-year deals, guys who kind of fizzled out in other cities like Wenberg in Columbus, and even Duclair and the 15 teams he played for. He's getting value out of these guys. They made a really good run. And this is with a $10 million goaltender they really don't use. It's a Spencer Knight show there. Like and even that other guy, I can't even think of his name. The other backup they have is played pretty well as well.
Oh, Dreege or whatever. He came out of nowhere.
I don't have confidence. That's it, Dreege. Yeah. I don't have a whole lot of confidence. And Russ, it sounds like you don't either. So if you have a GM who has to get creative and probably can't, and you have a unique situation where a pretty much generational player could be available, how big are you on the Flyers and Eichel here for their offensive woes? And it seems that it would be easier at that point, whether it's free agency, whether it's a smaller trade. I feel like there's more options on D here. Plus, you got a young guy coming in too, actually, who could potentially fill in spots until you figure it out. Do you see this offseason as Eichel, if they add him, they could patch the D with you need at least one top guy. You got to figure something out there. But like if you go two defensemen, how are you going to do anything offensively? So how big are you with they really should put all their chips in for Eichel?
That's why the Eichel move makes the most sense. If you know that he's going to be able to play. Because he's able, in theory, I know that it didn't play out in the last season with Buffalo, but Buffalo sucks. In theory, you bring him in, he can elevate some of the players around him. He just has to, because he's not going to be the only guy that you can cue in on as an opposing coach. He's not going to be the only player of value playing for the Flyers. You still are going to have protection through the Sean Couturier line, and depending on what you end up doing with Claude Giroux, if he's your 3C. I mean, I guess Kevin Hayes is there, great. But Eichel really helps a lot with elevating other players. And I see over in the comments, Chris McCarthy says that we're like underselling Wade Allison because he can maybe be a 25 goal a year scorer. Like, I hate to point this out. I don't mean this to be rude, but like the Flyers have had plenty of 25 goal scorers. That's not the problem, right? If your playmakers, if your Jake Voraceks and your Claude Giroux are good enough, and if your Sean Couturier is good enough, you should be able to make some of these young guys a 20 goal scorer. The problem is they don't have like a 40 goal scorer. They don't have a guy who puts, legitimate fear into the opposition when he's holding the puck, that he's going to be able to find the back of the net. They don't have that. Eichel, in theory, could at least unlock that potential in a number of your young wing players. And even in the, in the case of some of your vets that, might be big money guys that have kind of become disillusioned with the team, he might be able to elevate those guys. So like, that's why I think Eichel has to be one. And then you make a move for one of the other, top pair defensemen, and that's your off season. That to me is the path to making this team better. Aside from that, like I don't have faith in Fletcher being able to fill out the roster with creative decisions that are going to make them a Stanley Cup contender unless they make that big splash. And again, I haven't seen him make that big splash in Philadelphia. His biggest splash was trading for the rights to Kevin Hayes, convincing Kevin Hayes to take an inflated contract and include a no movement clause. And it is not going to be a great deal. It worked within reason in the first year. It wasn't great last year. By the time that contract is up, everybody's going to be ready to pack his bags for him. So in a best case scenario, Jack Eichel comes in, Kevin Hayes is the most overpaid 3C in the league. That would be perfect. That would be great for this team. That would be the role that Nolan Patrick should have been able to develop into, is that 2C that plays Kevin Hayes down to the 3C. Eichel fixes a lot of problems. It's just that so much of it depends on his health. And you have to decide if you are willing to roll the dice on it.
It sounds like you're saying that this is not a one-off season fix. This is, you need to add pieces now and, through the course of, a season or so, sprinkle in the rest. Get the foundation set up, right? And add more guys as you go. Like, this team is not going to be one game away from the Eastern Conference Finals again this season, right?
Well, say they make the Eichel move and the surgery thing really was just a ploy to get him out. And he goes through physical therapy and is able to play at a high level. All right. And that move costs you one of the young defensemen and probably a forward. Maybe it's Konechny, maybe it's not. And then you also go out and you acquire like a Seth Jones to pair with Ivan Provorov. You go out and maybe it's playing the waiting game on a Savard or somebody similar, or you can make another trade to get a second pair defenseman to pair with whichever other young defenseman is still there, if it's Myers, if it's Sanheim. And then Justin Braun's on your third pair with Cam York or Igor Zamula. I think as a defensive core, that's fine. And I think that in terms of forwards, like, you can certainly get away with this forward core if your back end is as strong as it would be, and if Eichel's playing at a high level. You actually could contend a lot more than if you put all the chips in on the defensive basket. If you go all defense for the sake of saving Carter Hart, you're going to have some real forward issues.
And
then
you
yes,
may
then
run
it's
into the
then it's
same
then it's a
issues.
2 or 3 year plan. And by that point, you've wasted the last good years out of Claude Giroux and probably Jake Voracek. And honestly, you're going to start to get yourself into some of those Sean Couturier years that, by the time you're ready to contend, he's going to be
For sure.
in a position where he's got so many miles on those legs at this point already. Like I am fearful of what he's going to look like at age 37, 38, because he's given so much to the team and the organization, and he's played as much as he has, and he's caught knocks and he's had injuries,
Yeah.
God, why did it get so negative? What
I don't know.
happened?
But that's,
It's your
and we have a
fault because
comment.
the internet was crap. That's what happened.
Well,
That's
we
it.
have a comment from Ann here, and I think this is the general feeling for most. I'm going to say real fans. I don't like to say hardcore fans. I don't know why, but real fans, because I think there's a difference in fans nowadays. There's the corporate gritty fans, and there's the fans who watch the team because they love hockey. And I think a lot of the fans who watch the team because they love hockey feel like Anthony here. I think they're expecting moves, they're expecting change, they want to see new faces, kind of like I was saying earlier. And this is the most important offseason, I think, for the Flyers in the last, I don't know, since the Richards Carter trades, or if you want to go back further to the Hartnell Timonen signings. I mean, this is an important offseason. I feel like Kyle here, he doesn't trust that Chuck Fletcher is going to do the right things, right? We're all kind of sitting here with, our tails between our legs, like, oh shit, like what's going to happen? And we don't really trust this organization to do the right thing. Like, sure, we were excited for James Van Riemsdyk and Kevin Hayes, but we knew the contracts weren't good. We were just excited to finally get, good players. Yeah.
Something. They did something.
Right. And it's kind of now, like looking back, it's kind of like slaps in the face. Like, hey, we got you Kevin Hayes. What are you so angry for? Hey, we got you James Van Riemsdyk. What are you so mad for? Like, I don't know, man.
Well, hey, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but like this team does have a free agency issue. There is no doubt about it. I've heard from too many people in and around the organization who have confirmed it multiple times over. Top free agents have not been interested in the last few years. You can blame Ron Hextall for that. You absolutely can.
Why do you think that is, Russ?
Huh?
Why do you think that is?
Because he didn't want to play ball on a lot of the top free agents because he had.
I don't know. Like, why would it be Ron Hextall's fault? The rebuild.
Oh, there we go. Oh no, we're back to the delay.
Damn. Bring back the pterodactyl.
Is it me?
There we go. Wait, he might be back.
No.
All right, so I'm just gonna act. The Hextall thing was a problem because Hextall, as part of the rebuild, didn't want to shell out a ton of cash and didn't want to play ball on a lot of top free agents, and it didn't go over well. And for as many times as people like to compare Hextall and Hinkie, which aren't exactly fair, that is one thing that both guys were notorious for, is the fact that they didn't want to shell out bucks. It's not so much the paying the money as much as it is giving the perception that you're in, because having a big market team that has money available and just throwing out the mere possibility that you could be interested in a guy is almost as valuable to an agent and to a player as actually shelling out the money yourself. That's a big reason why. They're working hard to rebuild that trust, but like Alex Pietrangelo when he was a free agent was not interested in coming here. The Flyers did try to make inroads with him. He wasn't interested in playing here. One, because this wasn't necessarily as close of a contender, obviously, as Vegas was, but a big part was because things surrounding the organization, a little bit of questions of what was going on, and the fact that, again, big money guys have not been attracted to this destination. It causes problems for your organization. So Fletcher, to me, is going to have to be the guy who goes out and makes these acquisitions via trade. And maybe, if it's a Seth Jones, if he really isn't going to re-sign right away, it's you take a year and you show him what Philadelphia is, and you try to pitch him on the idea of what Philadelphia can be to him, and then he re-signs. I don't see you making free agent splashes.
Now, what kind of deal do you think Columbus, if they're under the impression that Seth Jones isn't going to sign and they're going to have to trade him on a rental basis, how much cheaper do you think you can get Seth Jones, if you think you can?
I don't think it's going to change much. He would need to publicly say, it would have to be from him. He would have to say, yes, I will resign, or no, I won't resign. That's the only way that you're going to get any real change in the market. And I don't think he's going to. I really don't.
No, why
So
would he?
it doesn't help him. The only way that it helps is if he says right now, I will not re-sign, but his agent goes and tells all the teams that might be interested that he will. If the long term, if he's playing 7-dimensional chess and it's like, I don't want them to have to part with a player that can help us immediately. But honestly, I don't think Seth Jones is going to get a major roster player traded for him. I think that enough enough teams are speaking with agents right now and have a good idea of what the real market is going to be for Seth Jones and where he would be interested in re-signing and where there wouldn't be any shot. I don't see any team acquiring his rights if they don't think they can re-sign him.
Interesting. So what I'm afraid of with Dougie Hamilton and Seth Jones, I'm afraid because of Chuck Fletcher. This is even more reason why I want them to go after Ryan Ellis, because he's locked in. The contract that he has is great. That's why I think he's more, plus the intangibles that he brings to the actual game. He's a good player, but that contract, I don't trust Chuck Fletcher. I don't trust him at all. So if they can go out and get Ryan Ellis for what he's getting paid, I think that's great. I think it's 5-6 years at 6 point something million. Perfect.
625. Yep.
625. Yeah. That's even more reason why I want him more than the other two guys, because I know Fletcher is going to destroy those contracts, and I don't want that. So that's my thing there. So we've gone way over schedule, mostly because of me, and we didn't even get to Johnny Gaudreau.
Again,
We're not trading for Johnny Gaudreau.
Dude,
Thank God.
They're gonna bring in Ryan Getzlav and Alexander Edler. That's gonna be their big time moves this offseason.
Hey, that kind of stuff's
Franchise
helping the
changing
Canadians out, by the way. Trading for over the hill guys.
The only way that
After
they
this
make a move to
conversation,
Gaudreau,
I will accept nothing less than Ellis, Eichel, and Seth Jones.
All of them.
the only way that it makes sense for them to make a trade for Gaudreau, honestly, and I think it was Nick Kiprios when he was on our show said it, or it might have been Bundy, I don't remember, is if you're doing almost a straight up trade of Gaudreau for Voracek, just to change the scenery. You're still getting a talented player. You're still getting somebody who in theory you could unlock a lot of point potential from, but just needs to change the scenery. I think that if you're going to make a deal out there, though, Tkachuk makes a lot more sense. I think it's going to cost you less. He's 23. If you're trying to fill your team with guys that are reasonably priced, that have already got a few years in the league, he makes sense. I think he makes a lot more sense than Gaudreau does.
Imagine a Giroux, Eichel, Tkachuk. Oh yeah, that's it. That's got to be the line right there.
Huh?
Is your laptop going to die, Russ?
Oh yeah. Well, I was at 10%, and then the laptop popped up that your computer's going to go to sleep soon.
Because the jerk off host over here can't get his computer right.
Well, listen. I mean, the fact that you don't have your computer plugged in through an Ethernet while you're trying to,
I learned the hard way over here. That's what Italians do.
Setting.
All right,
that's true. That's true.
So,
but now I'm good. Look at that.
Russ,
Boom.
who do you want?
Charging up?
Who do you want to win GM of the year?
Oh, I would love Bill Zito to win just so I can shove it in San Filippo's face on our show. That'd be great. Absolutely. 100%. Bill Zito. Here,
looks like
I'm gonna throw fuel on your fire from something you said before. The Bill Zito interview here was a courtesy interview. I've been told that he left that that I believe it was a virtual interview with he can't imagine being like somebody who's incredibly well prepared to go over your vision, and you get the kind of the nods, and the people are kind of on their phones while you're sitting there, while you're trying to tell them about how you're going to improve things. And that you're getting nothing more than cursory attention and all right, cool. But right off the onset, you might have binders full of information. Let's get into the nitty gritty. Here's how I'm going to fix this team. And instead you're effectively being told, yeah, thanks for being here. It's really nice.
Doesn't
It's
sound
like a lot of these
professional.
guys on the it's a lot of these guys on The Bachelorette. You know, they go in looking for love, and by night one, she doesn't learn your name, and she sends you home with the first rose ceremony. That was Bill Zito.
Bill Zito's
Chuck
playing.
Fletcher's the guy who they bring in like 3/4 of the season is gone. And it's a guy who's like a retread from another season who's not going to win. But, you know, if nothing else, he's at least a safe pick. He's at least somebody safe to bring to the table.
And that's the kind of team he's going to build. He's going to build the safe team. And that's what we're going to see this offseason, God damn it. That's
I'm
what it's
hoping
gonna
that
be.
if I publicly excoriate Chuck Fletcher enough, it's going to piss him off and actually get him off his ass.
Yes.
And into the war room and make some real meaningful moves.
I think that, Jim, what you said, a lot of people were afraid of. They bring in this guy who's safe, who makes the playoffs, usually gets the second round every once in a while. There's that third round magic, but they're never really a contender. And that'll sell tickets still because they're still competitive. And I think that's what a lot of people were afraid of. And I think that's why a lot of people still come out and say, oh, they don't care. They got to do this. They got to do that. Yeah, they signed the big three of coaches and whatnot. But until they really make some moves this offseason, I understand some of those people's concerns.
I'm just depressed. I thought I was going to be in a great mood after the show, having Russ back on HW.
All right, let's talk about some good things. All right. The Philadelphia Flyers. All right. They were a fake first seed. Yes, fine. But they did make the playoffs 2 years ago. The Flyers are incapable of making the postseason in back-to-back years. They're also incapable of missing the postseason in back-to-back years. Since they missed the postseason, they're certainly going to make the postseason next year. Now, how far they'll get, that's up to you.
Why is it up to me?
It's positive.
It's up to you. It's up to you. Here's a real question. Like if you're out there and you're a Flyers fan and you're upset and you feel like I'm super negative, right? Because I don't necessarily believe that Chuck Fletcher is going to go out and make earth-shattering, franchise-altering moves like he might have to for them to be a Stanley Cup contender. Like what do you really think this team is? Because there is that segment of the fan base that thinks this team is like a lot more like that January to March team from 2 seasons ago that was lighting the world on fire. They don't seem to buy into the idea that if COVID doesn't stop the world, there is a chance that from March on, they weren't going to be able to keep that momentum going. There's this belief that like that 2.5 months of greatness is really what this team can be. Do any of the three of you believe that that's what this team could be? If you effectively ran this back next year, there's a chance that they can rekindle that magic.
No.
I don't think they're built to be that. And the example I'm going to use is the New York Islanders. Like that's a team with, Matt Barzal, but they're constructed to play as a team and win as a team. And they have guys contributing up and down the lineup.
They start their fourth line every game.
Right. If you look at the Flyers, there's talent on the team. So don't get me wrong, but they're not built to win as a team. They don't have the proper pieces to win that way. And so like Russ
Bill
is talking
Zito
about
lost.
Bill
Zito lost. He lost.
Oh, get out. Really?
Just came out. Yep. Lou won.
That's why I brought it up.
Again?
Yeah.
Lou.
Yep. Lou won.
He traded for Palmieri, right? That's it.
12.
Who else he
Wait.
had?
So he had 12. Hold on a second. This is wild. Hold on.
Breaking news.
Lou got 12 first place selections. He finished with 104 points. Mark Bergevin got 13 first place votes, but only 79 points. So he had more first place votes than Lou did, but had, 25 fewer points overall. Bill Zito led a close three-way race for third place that included Joe Sakic of the Avalanche and Kelly McCrimmon of the Vegas Golden Knights. So Bill Zito was like a distant third in this, but Bergevin should have, if you're going by first place votes, Bergevin won. If you're going by overall points.
This is just for regular season too, isn't it?
Yeah.
What did he do this? I don't know. What put him over this year compared to last?
Re-signing Matt Martin.
All the Mats, and he traded for.
He's a hockey guy.
I guess.
Maybe the Flyers should start shaving during the regular season. I don't know. It works. It works.
Bill Gerwin got no love. I mean, that team was nothing like a few years. I mean, Kaprizov comes in and makes a couple of tweaks here and there, pushes Vegas to Game 7 in a pretty tough, top-heavy division. He hung with them. No love at all.
None.
That's true. Yeah.
Sad.
Anyway,
So
it's your question there, Russ. I saw this team that was going for that run before COVID stopped everything. That team that we all thought could have won it all. They were so good. All they did was lose a couple of role players and one defenseman. And the fact that turned this team in what it is this year, no, they need to move mountains. If they run it back, I think he should be fired. Like, it is ridiculous how many holes they have, how many fundamental holes they have, how weak-minded they are, how weak in general they are. To see Scott Lawton, I say this almost every podcast now, get jackknife powerbombed at center ice and nobody raises an eyebrow is an embarrassment. You know, like, they need so many different tweaks here and there. We're talking about the big name players. If there's any money left over, they need to add sprinkle in some serious grit or something to this team. Like, I don't see this team as anything in the contender market at all. They're still a playoff bubble team. They caught magic for a while, and that was really it.
Let me hijack your show one more time. There's another thing that's at play, and it's another reason why it's such an important thing that they go out and address the back end of this team. People like to get caught up in the fact that Carter Hart wasn't the same guy this year. I simply point people to the home road splits of the 1920 season, because for some reason over time, this has just gotten lost to history. Carter Hart was a bad goalie on the road 2 years ago. When you look at his splits, save percentage at home, 94.3. On the road, 85.7. When you look at his goals against average, elite, 1.63 at home in 25 home games. In 18 road games, 3.81. There's more to the Matt Niskanen departure than might have met the eye. If you're going to hope to get Carter Hart back to what the perception of what Carter Hart was 2 years ago, which is kind of keeping that fact, those splits kind of, off to the side, you need to address the back end of this team. Because for as many big splashy moves as you could theoretically make, or as many ancillary moves that you think can, raise this team's ceiling, if you don't address that back end and you don't solidify Carter Hart to be more like that 1.63 goals against at home guy, this team has no shot. They cannot go into a season banking just on Carter Hart if they don't solidify that back end with legitimate top end talent. And if they don't, then that backup goaltender, whoever it is that they bring in, has to be a guy that Alain Vigneault can ride for 3, 4, 5 games in a row in the season if Hart is in his own head again. That's a whole other thing. And
we didn't even discuss, because it sounds, the more this offseason goes on, or will go on, that Brian Elliott's not going to be back. And a lot of the names that have surfaced are Antti Ranta, Jonathan Bernier. James Reimer's been brought up. I'm not too big on James Reimer, but are those some of the names you're considering? Are you considering, hey, we're going to try to swing some kind of trade and hopefully they eat some money for like a Jonathan Quick type? He something crazy like that. Or are you okay with a Bernier or Ranta or somebody of that nature?
If you can get a team to eat money and you can bring a guy like Quick in, who isn't the same guy he was, but is at least reliable and could provide some kind of veteran leadership to Hart, then that's worth it. Otherwise, I think you're going to end up going kind of bargain barrel in free agency. I don't think that you're going to find somebody who's much better than what Brian Elliott is, but the thing that you're going to get is probably better reliability than what Brian Elliott was, just by virtue of his age, right? And by virtue of the fact that he physically was breaking down because he was getting called on to play more games in a compacted schedule than he should have been. The big issue is you don't want to spend $4 million on your backup when you have so many holes in front of net that you need to shore up. So you have to try to figure out if it's a team eating money or if it's going out and making a bargain barrel signing. That's what you're going to have to do.
Columbus has a couple goalies. Maybe they make a move for Jones and they toss him a goalie back with him. Who knows?
Salo, what's they saying? I've heard that as well, but I don't know.
Yeah, they got a couple guys over there. Breaking news over here from Chris McCarthy. Matt Niskanen will play next season. No, I'm just kidding. I love Chris, but I never know what's true or not here. So that would be interesting if Matt Niskanen played next season. Said go on Hockey Buzz. I don't really use
Or
Hockey
just
Buzz.
waited
Do you
out as
guys?
here's a flyer, moved on. That would be
Yeah,
great.
that would be great. Yeah. Hey, I wouldn't want to play with these guys either. I don't blame him. Shit, he turned down $5
Matt
million
Niskanen
to stay home.
He turns out to be the smartest guy in the room.
Yeah, man, you kidding me? Yeah, dude. We could keep talking. I want to, but we've had you on for an hour and a half, so I feel a little bad. I know you got stuff you got to get to. So do we. But I mean, I don't know about Jack and
You
Kyle.
got to fix your computer.
I got to fix my computer. Yeah. So why don't we wrap this up, Russ? Why don't you tell everybody where they can find you at? I'm sure, like I always say, that if they're listening to us, they already follow and listen to you. But just in case,
you can find me over at crossingbroad.com, where I've been writing a lot about sports betting, especially the NBA playoffs. And then, of course, Snow the Goalie, the Only Flyers podcast. I did acknowledge, though, I said to my wife that was coming on the show, and she said, but Snow the Goalie is the Only Flyers podcast. And I said, that's true. But High and Wide is the only Philadelphia hockey podcast. So there is that. Like that's
right.
You know,
Philadelphia hockey. Yeah, Russ.
Philadelphia hockey podcast.
Hey,
we can all live in the same.
Wait, where do you see Philadelphia hockey podcast?
Listen, I'm just gonna say it. That's what I'm gonna call it. It's Philadelphia hockey podcast.
He dubbed it, Jim.
Or we can say a positional shot podcast, High and Wide. But I don't think that rolls off the tongue quite as much. So I'm gonna.
Yeah, we'll go with Philadelphia.
Just don't call them fanboys, okay?
Oh no, I don't think that you guys are the fanboys.
We're not. I don't know if you ever.
They're out there though. They are.
In droves.
They are.
And that's okay. If you're a fan, by the way, if you're a fan and you're super positive and you want to believe this team is going to be great, by all means you can. I have no problem with that. You should be able to enjoy the team as a fan. I will think that you're probably delusional and that you need to have a little bit of reality, but I do want you to enjoy the team.
Dude, you know what it means?
If you try to pass yourself off as somebody who covers the team objectively and you're fanboying, you're doing a disservice to those people who do want to be positive. There's a difference.
All it means if you're fanboying, and I see where you're going with that. I'm just going to stick to the fanboy part here. All it means is you haven't been a fan of Philly teams long enough. Right, your heart hasn't been broken yet. Yeah, your head hasn't been stomped on in Game 7 of the NBA playoffs or whatever it is. Just means you haven't been a fan long enough. So fanboy it up. But when it comes time to the big boy conversations, maybe back off a little bit, all right? Because we've been around. We've been disappointed. We hate everything. Just let us live our lives.
We actually saw them have success in the playoffs that decade ago.
Yeah. So why don't we wrap this up before we go there?
Oh man, that last comment that came in, that's good stuff. That's excellent. I don't know if it's true or not, but I'm. Not only do I believe that was said, I believe the person believes that it's going to happen.
Hey, maybe next year. You never know.
If you combine the next 6 years, he might get there.
You know what? We need to have you on again to talk. I have more topics I want to talk to. Nolan Patrick's one. We'll do this another night. Okay. Why don't we wrap it up here? I mean, plenty of people are still watching. You guys got anything you want to do? No, I'm just kidding. Let's wrap it up. So everybody, thanks for hanging out. Thanks for watching. Make sure you give us a follow, HW Radio 18 on Twitter, Facebook. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Trying to build up a YouTube following. Not really sure how to do that. So just listen to me and go follow, please. Subscribe, HW Hockey or High and Wide Hockey on there. And let's build a YouTube following. Let's have fun. Until next week, we'll be back with another High and Wide. Thanks, Russ.
Thanks for having me.